Okay, so here we are, a half hour later. Actually, it's a little more than a half hour. My timer went off, then I got distracted. But actually, that's just to show you that it's okay. If you forget and it's not quite a half hour, just still come back and do your stretch and folds. It's not like your bread is not on a timer. It's not gonna know if you're a little later than a half hour. Usually you do stretch and folds about 3 times with about a half hour in between each stretch and fold. I'm gonna get my hand wet here. I recommend just getting your hand wet, not dripping wet, but just a little wet. It'll stick a little less. The more you, by the third stretch and fold, it's not gonna be as sticky, but the first one, it's gonna be a little stickier. So here's my bread. It's already kind of rising a bit. What I'm gonna do is kind of pick that dough up and stretch it, push it down. And I'm gonna turn it about 90 degrees, pull it up, stretch it down. You can see it's already less sticky though than it was. It's kind of fun to watch it evolve here. Stretch. This is all again just about developing the gluten. I keep turning about 90 degrees. I just do that 4 or 5 times. Sometimes I might even just take it out of there by the last one because it's less sticky and just kind of stretch and fold it in my hand, but you don't have to do it that way. Just stretching and folding it. And that's it. So wait another half hour and do it again. Wait another half hour and do it again. And then I'll talk to you about the next step after that. I will come back. Okay, stretch and fold number 2. Here's our dough. It's kind of expanding a little bit. It's getting, that hand's wet, but both my hands are a little bit, it's getting less sticky, which after it does its bulk ferment, which we'll talk about later, it does get a little less sticky. That is kind of the goal. So I'm just gonna get in here and my dough is getting, look at that, so nice and smooth. Lots of good gluten stuff happening here. Stretch, it's kind of fun actually. So some people will say, you know, you'd be on like forums and they're like, I know it's not a popular opinion, but I just mix my dough up and let it sit and shape them and bake. And that's what I used to do too. And you totally can do that. You could just mix this up and let it ferment all day and then try to shape them and bake them. But what I find is that it's really hard to shape your loaves. Sometimes if you see people use like those, like they call it a banneton, these baskets, we'll look at those later, to shape their loaves, and people will put them in there and they like come out. I'm like, how does that work? My dough is too sloppy and wet. Like I just have to keep it shaped in something. It'll just like spread out like pancake. That was my dough before I did like stretch and folds and the slap and fold. So you could make bread that way. It's not going to even be terrible, but you can make it a lot better and it doesn't really take much effort. And I think you'll find more satisfaction because your dough will be easier to work. You can make it that way and your bread it'll be decent. It won't be terrible, but it doesn't take a lot to make your bread better and make it more fun to make and make it more satisfying to make and to feel like your dough feels like it should and that it's easier to work with. So it's really easy to do these stretch and folds. Now, there are days where I totally forget, like I mix up my dough and I have a plan, but then I run out or something happens and I don't do it, but I'll still bake that dough. And if it's not shaping real well, sometimes I just turn it into focaccia or something, but I'll usually try to make it. It just try again next time, right? Like it's not a total loss. It's just, that's the beauty of sourdough. It's really actually way more forgiving than what we give it credit for. I mean, people get so precise and so like, has to be this and percentages and numbers but it's bread and it's yeast. It's an organism. Yes. Can you totally flop it? Yes. Like, can you add way too much water? Yes. Can you kill your yeast? Yes. But you know, when you're working in just basic parameters, there's a lot of forgiveness in your bread. So don't be discouraged if you plan to do your slap or stretch and folds and then you got to run out somewhere and it doesn't happen. Not the end of the world. So you just try again next time and you bake that bread because it's still going to be yummy with some toasted with some butter. So, okay, tune in for one more stretch and fold. And then that'll be the end of stretch and folds. And then we'll talk about bulk fermentation. Okay, here we are, last stretch and fold. So let's take a look at it. You can actually see I'm getting the right place, some bubbles forming. This is happy dough. It's doing what it's supposed to do. I'm going to go ahead and you can just see, look, the reason I can stretch and not break is because of gluten formation. And that's what gives your dough so fun. This is where I was talking about. Sometimes you can just take it at this point and you'll kind of feel it start to resist a little bit as you go. as it gets tugged on. Be fun to see what's happening molecularly there. It gets a little unwieldy, so be careful if you take it out so you don't accidentally drop it when you've gotten this far. So you kind of get a feel for it that it's done enough stretch and fold. So this has got this nice, it's a little sticky, but it's got good stretching power. Like it can really stretch. Some people do like a, it's on camera. I don't know if you've heard of like a window pane test to see how far you can stretch it. I don't know a lot about that. I could research it, but honestly, for me, it's not really, I don't need to get that nitpicky about it. I can see that it's stretching and not breaking, and so I can see the gluten's forming. So now the last step is bulk fermentation, and that just means sort of where it spends its bulk of time fermenting. I guess that's where that word comes from. That's just, you'll see that reference, bulk fermentation, and that's the point right now that that's referring to. So let's just recap. The night before I baked, I fed my starter, and I let it sit all night, preferably a little bit of a warmer spot so that it's ready by morning. In the morning, I fed my little bit of starter. I took some out, about 200 grams, and then I fed it 750 grams of water, 1,000 grams of flour, 20 grams of salt, mixed that all up, got it in a nice ball. I slapped and folded, it's hard to put in past tense. I did my slap and folds for about 5 minutes, put it in some container where it has some space, and then I did stretch and folds every 30 minutes, 3 times each. You can do more if you want, but once the dough feels like it's about right, it's enough to do that. And then I'm gonna now let this sit. And so this will sit the majority, I don't wanna say the majority of the day, depends on the temperature. I'm gonna put my warmer around this so that I can get it done today. Yeah, I'd like to get it done today. So I will put my warmer around that, and I'm just gonna watch it. And you'll see things about 50% rise or 75% rise. Generally, you don't want it to like double, because this is the trickiest part, because there's not an exact, do this for 5 minutes or do this every 30 minutes. You just kind of watch it. You want to see it rising, and you can kind of touch it. It should get less sticky when it's ready. But it's still going to rise when you shape your loaf. So it doesn't have to do all its rising right now. And you don't want it to over rise, because then it can be a little bit, it just gets kind of sticky and messy and a little bit hard to deal with. And you'll know when you've let it go. You'll be like, wow, look how much it rose. But then when you go to shape your loaves, it's a bit of a sticky mess. Again, still salvageable, but messy, not ideal, not exactly how you want it to be. So you'll learn that, and you'll get a little bit better sense of when it's done. So I'm at about 1.5 liters. So I'm going to look for it to get maybe up to that 3 liter, maybe a little bit lower. And then I'm going to kind of feel it and see if it's feeling, you know, like it's risen, it's a little bubbly, and try to catch it before it's too sticky. This is a spot in the process that I sometimes forget about it, and it gets to be dinner time, and I'm like, oh, we have to cook dinner. Oh, I need to shape my loaves. Everybody move out. I need some space to do this, because I don't want to let it go too long. So I'll hop back on after this is bulk fermented and show you what it looks like. We'll see where I catch it in the process. I'm a little bit more tuned in today since I'm making a video. I'm hoping I won't forget, and show you what we do after bulk fermentation is done.